What's up guys, it's Punchy, and we're finally back with the first Deepwoken weekly update in 2025. It's been about 2 weeks in between this and the last update, which dropped with massive content revolving around world events. In this period, they took some time to smooth out some of the new issues, but we're here once again with a ton of new content and stuff to check out. I'm sure there's something here for everyone, but make sure to hop in the game and test everything new to get that full experience for yourself. As always, if you enjoy exclusive update content just like this, make sure to like and subscribe. Anyway, let's get right into it. With a new weapon for our Summer Company fans, we've got the one-handed or two-handed Rosen's Roscoe. In this update, we've essentially received the big iron, and I'm not talking about the Iron Requiem. This is a larger revolver with a realistic design that looks very similar to early revolvers in, I guess, real life. Other than this, it does have a different sound effect on attacks and criticals, but it's much of the same. There's nothing too special about this weapon gameplay-wise, but one thing that stands out to me is the higher than normal chip damage. So if you work on building around this, I think the Roscoe can be pretty powerful. Also added in today's update, we received some new racial ornaments specifically for the Etrean race. It's totally optional to do so, but at any barber or found inside the customization menu, there's new 3D scales to equip. There's an option with a bunch of spiny spikes that all go out to the side, 3 smaller ones that point downward, and another that aren't as spiky. Of course, they're optional to use, so you don't have to select any of them, but the options are pretty cool. Also, with a new update to customization, the VESPERIAN race, which have masks, can still equip facial equipment, and that's pretty cool. Even if it does clip through, they can still equip them, which can allow for pretty interesting designs. Moving on to something new, that's more of a balancing change, but it is going to affect how cooldowns work at a fundamental level. The cooldowns of many and most mantras that remove the player off the ground will now begin to start resetting their cooldown as soon as the user hits the floor. With leap abilities or jumps that keep you airborne, there will no longer be any opportunity to stall for cooldowns, and this is huge. Hopefully this is a positive change for Deepwoken, and I'm excited to see how this impacts combat. With another legendary change somewhat related to Deepwoken races, we have a massive echo unlock called Multifaceted. So after purchasing this unlock, which is pretty expensive, this echo allows the player to reallocate all racial innate stats into any stat they want, which lets you make builds with any aspect in the game. To be honest, I think this is extremely powerful and definitely worth checking out, so please buy this. This also works the exact same way with the Elementalist Echo talent, letting you allocate any stat you want into any attunement that you have unlocked, as well as starting with however many elements you like. Building off the new Saintsworn Oath, there's several changes to balance and behavior that are worth checking out. Over the last week, Saintsworn has definitely had some trouble interacting with every single elemental talent, but in this update, compatibility for some of them has been heavily increased. I won't be listing every single talent since there's a lot, but there's a large handful of essential attunement talents that should hopefully work with Saintsworn's Ether Proselyte. And with that being said, there's also been some major nerfs coming to this oath as well. For starters, Saint Synergy's buff towards other element mantras has been greatly reduced, cutting its multiplier bonus from a massive 25% to only 15%. Sure, it looks like it's a bit less, but move damage should be significantly impacted. Further upon this, the Saint Sword itself actually receives some smaller pen and damage changes, reducing the damage you deal with the base attacks. Onto the mantras and assists, a few of them have received damage and stun nerfs, but some of the major changes came to their windup. Both the Blade of Saints windup for Gale Breath and Thundercall have been hit substantially, making them a bit more reactable since the windup is greater. I think these are decent changes since the Oath already has creative options that are unavailable for other builds, so the innate tools could be a bit weaker. Overall, there's additional small Saintsworn changes here and there in the notes, but these I think were the most impactful. To start with a pretty substantial buff to one of the classic Deepwoken Oaths that happened a bit earlier last week, OATHLESS has finally received a buff. In recent Deepwoken history, Oaths have been receiving more and more mantra slots, which lets them use a larger toolset than other builds. OATHLESS, the Oath that has essentially nothing but wild cards and Oath resistance, felt kinda left in the dust. Luckily though, in this update, OATHLESS has been buffed, increasing its wildcard mantra slots from 2 to 3, so now there's a reason to try this out over things like Fade Trimmer, which will be interesting to see. Finally, moving into the game with an interesting monster model update, we actually got a change to the Stone Knight. In-game, these mantras look pretty similar to how they did before, but I think it's been optimized and briefly updated. Previously, the Stone Knight Knight model was smoother with a bunch of rounded parts and circles, but that's been abandoned for a rigid geometric approach. So in the current game, Stone Knights are a bit more blocky and sharp with a line connecting their broken eye to the rest. So not too much has been changed here, but I think the approach they're going for with the straight up rock monster fits a little bit better. And speaking about monsters, we've seen further development in their behavior in this update. Overall, monsters that are using the new complex context-based gameplay are optimized and less laggy than before. If you don't know what this is, monsters that detect players based on their range and use specific attacks accordingly that work have been improved and should be less laggy. Also, multiple monsters have been changed to fit into the complex AI pathfinding template, which is one step further for all PvE mobs. In the near future of Deepwoken, I'd expect all of our Deepwoken monsters to be a bit less laggy and on this new system, which is great. Now, onto some brief balancing and bug fixes. Let's talk about a few big ones. First, with a major nerf and massive bug fix that is genuinely life-changing for people who make content, we have a change coming to Shadowcast's Sightless Still. This talent shouldn't really be in the game, but it's still here. Anyway, after hitting your enemy with Shadowcast, their screen increasingly gets darker and darker, but for a while, it just didn't work correctly. Previously, it did not matter how much you got hit, your screen would always flash black and fully darken, making it just impossible to see. This would happen multiple times a fight with Shadowcast users and was actually unbearable, but hopefully in this update it's been removed, and I'm glad to be done with that. Next, with some adjustments to a new talent from the World event, we have balancing for the Parasol Planter talent. Grotesque Resilience reduces damage over time effects like burn, but now it's way less than before. This is an overall damage resistance nerf, and it's reduced even further if the damage over time is self-inflicted. Stuff like Flame Within with this talent have been hit substantially, so keep an eye out for that if you're trying to use that talent. Onto some weaponry changes. There is some meta shifting nerfs here, and they're pretty big. So first, with the Eye of Malice, this thing's damage has been impacted pretty heavily on the crit and M1s. The base damage of this weapon and its critical have been nerfed, but I still think it has some upsides in combat due to the range. Moving on to another new weapon, we got some adjustments and buffs to the Heart of Enmity Great Axe, the Chorus of Agonies. There's some overall balancing and quality of life that came to this option, so it's cool to see. For starters, the chip damage on hit is no longer the staggering 75%, but now it's been lowered to a bit more fair 50%. To be honest, dealing 50% of your initial damage on a block is still pretty nice, but yes, this is a big nerf. Additionally, onto gameplay, the critical attack will now cancel if the first part is missed, making it safer for the user. This seems like an overall buff to me, but the numbers have been adjusted. Next up, with a pretty impactful change to a beloved weapon type, we have a substantial nerf to the Katana criticals. So with the use of a normal Katana crit, we quick draw our blade, slashing forward while dealing major posture damage and sniping people. If you were techie and got used to this weapon, you know its critical hit has a small lingering hitbox, lasting a bit and punishing players after a small delay. This could be extremely powerful for clipping players who didn't expect the hit, but now in this update, it's finally been removed. Could this be the end of the Katana meta? The damage is now instant and doesn't have a lasting hitbox, but I guess we'll see. And that's about it for today's editions. As always, feel free to head in game for yourself and join up for Battle Royale, and maybe you'll see me if you're lucky. Thank you so much to all my loyal fans and members who do support my channel directly, and if you like what I do, feel free to join up down below for even more content. As always, thank you again, and make sure to like and subscribe. I'm shooting for 105k subs, and we're only 1,000 away, so let's hit that goal. Have a good one. It's punch-in time.